All right. So, um, our role is to help motivated individuals. We do work a lot with women, but we help motivated individuals regain their energy, focus, gut, and hormonal balance without extreme changes so that they can claim a vibrant life. Honestly, even if they don't know what to do next. And that's really the type of person who comes to see us. These are very common symptoms. The ones that are in bold are very common symptoms that we see on a daily basis. But the line where we say without extreme lifestyle change is really important to us, because we do believe that life has to be enjoyed, food has to be enjoyed. And in order to enjoy life, you do need good health. I do think that's a basic. But nobody wants to live on a diet forever. I don't believe that one needs to be restricted forever. One just needs to know what those restrictions need to be, and then you get a very clear direction forward. And what I find with a lot of my clients is once they start feeling better, some of these changes become part of their lifelong patterns and habits. A little bit about myself and Bonnie. So we set up the nutrition clinic about 12 years ago. And as I said, I'm trained in microbiology and biochemistry. I then trained I was mentored through somebody called Dr. Dan Kalish. He is one of the few people who has taken functional medicine and even tested it out in a clinical trial. So he's done a clinical trial with Mayo Clinic, and his methodology is what I use. I've had additional training after that. The Institute for Functional Medicine, if anybody's interested, is a fantastic place that's doing a lot of education in this space. Bonnie has been trained as a coach with the functional medicine coaching angle, and she continues to increase her training. She's a big fan of what's called tiny habits, and the idea being that it's also called atomic habits, small things that you can do on a daily basis that have tremendous impact on the body. It's not about necessarily meditating for 2 hours on the weekend. It's about what do you do every day that matters. And that's really something that Bonnie brings to the practice. She also manages a team of coaches who help our clients work through their process. Okay. So what I do see is that a lot of women in their 40s and 50s struggle with chronic fatigue, poor sleep, stubborn weight, and constantly feeling tired and wired. And I do think today in the newspaper, in the life section, there was a conversation about burnt out. And I think we're hearing a lot more about being burnt out. And a lot of people are eating healthy, working out, doing everything right in their capacity, and still something is not feeling right. And at the root of this, in my opinion, are your hormones. Now, your hormones are messenger units that go around your body. They really go from top to toe, which is why if something isn't working well hormonally, it can impact the entire body. Hormones are not just female hormones. I also mean stress hormones, sleep hormones, blood sugar, thyroid. There is a whole family of hormones and of course blood sugar, and they really are like these dominoes where one does impact the other. They don't work in isolation. Hormonal imbalance can wreck metabolism, sleep and mood, can affect blood sugar and therefore energy, and it can short circuit that body's basic innate healing process. And when you don't get that hormonal drama under control, one of the things that we observe is that a lot of people are in this continuous fight or flight mode. The fight or flight mode is called it's called the sympathetic nervous system, which is what you need in order to get things done, in order to just constantly be in the switched on achieving state. And our body is not designed to be in that state all the time. It ideally would not be in that state more than 20 to 30% of the time. It really wants to be in this parasympathetic, which is the opposite dominant nervous system mode, which is really when you rest and digest and everything falls into place. And that's really when healing takes place. And this, in my opinion, is a key issue that I see, and I've seen over the last few years, and it really is getting worse. And I think people are starting to recognize it. But when you're in this tired and wired zone, you often don't even know what to do about it. And so we do have a lot of strategies for women who are in this state. And for women and men where weight doesn't shift, this can be one of the reasons why that happens. The other thing that can happen is inflammation and gut imbalances. You might have heard the saying that health starts in the gut, disease starts in the gut. Gut healing is super important, really, for everything. Energy, metabolism. We're seeing an increase in autoimmunity issues in younger and younger population. And autoimmunity is nothing but your body getting confused about what is itself and what is foreign. And that is really a gut related issue because your immune system largely sits in the gut. So anybody dealing with an autoimmune condition really needs to start looking at gut health as the starting point. Blood sugar regulation, obviously very important because insulin is one of the most important hormones in the body. And your stress system and blood sugar system are highly interconnected, which is highly interconnected to inflammation and the entire heart disease set of issues. So really what we see is that this hormonal drama is literally wrecking everything, preventing our clients from enjoying a well-balanced, productive life, looking and feeling their best. And what we do is take them at the start where they are. We track their symptoms very carefully, and we want to get them to a place where they can enjoy their life, where they can focus on what they really want to do, because these symptoms are taken care of, and the understanding of what's happening in the body becomes a lot more advanced. So this is the system I use, and honestly, this is similar to the system I used on myself. So when I was I was dealing with fertility issues some 15 years ago, and I knew something wasn't right in my body. I had what's called IBS, and IBS is often a collection of symptoms, gut-related symptoms that are actually triggered by stress. So I had IBS. I had a whole host of issues, and what I did then, and what I do for all our clients, is I start by dividing the body into three systems. So let's bring this to that conversation about energy. So you can have this system, which is your brain and hormonal system, the neuroendocrine system. This is the digestive system. This is how you detoxify. Now, often I have clients coming in saying, I'm just feeling tired. I'm feeling exhausted. Now that exhaustion can come from so many places. It can come from what's called the HPA axis, or the nervous system, or stress, burnout. That's what HPA axis is. This is mood. This is energy. And by energy over here, I really mean what's called cellular energy, which is your body's ability to take in nutrients and convert that into energy units. And I will be talking about that in more detail in the next few slides. And obviously all the hormonal cascade that's linked to this. What's interesting is that the brain and the gut are constantly communicating with each other. So if somebody has burnout and they think, I have this conversation almost daily. Somebody will say, I have this sense of fatigue and burnout, but my gut's completely fine. I have no issues with digestion. My answer is always, we need to look, because you don't have symptoms, but that doesn't mean you don't have issues. There can be underlying food sensitivities. There can be underlying imbalance in the flora. We call this leaky gut. Leaky gut is perhaps a word you've heard more recently. It's basically a description where your body doesn't digest and absorb nutrients well. And if you think about it, if you don't digest and absorb nutrients well, how will you produce energy? You need your basic nutrients. They need to go through the consumption, to the digestion, to the absorption, to be used before energy is produced. And then everything that happens here goes down the chute to detoxification. Now, in my view, detoxification is not a kit that you buy. It's not a juice cleanse. It's none of that. Detoxification is something your body does all the time. It's constantly cleaning itself. And you can either hinder it through what you're consuming, or you can help it. And if you don't detoxify well, this happens. If you don't detoxify well, you create this situation called autotoxicity, where toxins are just not cleared and they go back into the system. They go back and they hurt the brain. So just getting people to balance these three systems, to go through these channels, is really important. But you can only do that when you know which of these jigsaw puzzle pieces is not in place or needs to be optimized. So if I dig deeper into our methodology, as I said, gut health is one of the key pillars. And these are some of the symptoms that are linked to gut health. So obviously bloating, reflux, allergies, eczema, candida, SIBO, but even anxiety, because of the because of the brain gut connection, anxiety can be connected to gut health. Obviously, deficiencies and allergies can, and blood sugar issues, which definitely affect energy and how you feel on a really on a minute by minute basis. Gut health is really connected to stress and sleep. Now, that's very obvious. When you think about low energy, you do think about, well, how well do you sleep? Do you get enough sleep? Is that the reason for your fatigue? But there's some interesting things over here. Pain is an inflammatory response. If your stress hormones are off, if you're not sleeping well, you will feel more, there will be more inflammation, you will feel more pain. And some of these other issues, including weight loss resistance, blood sugar issues, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, autoimmunity, and burnout. And then, as I said, detoxification really takes that whole sort of train journey to its completion. And if that doesn't work well, these are all autotoxicity, allergies, eczema, chemical sensitivities. And for women going through perimenopause, if you don't detoxify well, that can contribute to hot flashes, fibroids, cysts, this whole space called estrogen dominance. And I did speak about that last week. So if anybody hasn't received the link to that video, please let us know. We'll send that to you. I just spent some time discussing what is estrogen dominance and what you can do about it. This is the roadmap we use. So we've divided into 3 phases, 9 steps, and the idea is functional medicine can be very complex. The body is highly interconnected. It's really all systems, but you need to have a starting place. You need to have some hooks. Otherwise, you don't get to complete the work in a systematic fashion. And so we obviously start with an intake and review. We do really interesting lab testing, and I'm going to share some results with you in the next few slides. We always start with food first. We look at what people are eating, and in many cases, just starting to make some simple dietary changes can have a massive impact on sleep, on energy, on skin, on hormones, on weight. That's just really a starting point. And it's not just a starting point, it's a foundation. That is going to be the foundation long term. We then get assessments around these areas, and we really start diving into sleep and stress. How do you repair gut health? What's going on there? How do you detoxify? Metabolism and hormone balance almost sits on top of that, because if you don't get this right, just going on a sort of hormone balanced diet may not be enough if you don't take all of this into consideration. And you need all these steps in order to reach that long-term resilience. And for me, long-term resilience is knowing your body, knowing what it needs, knowing what it doesn't need, having a clear plan so that you can be almost done with that and then get on to what matters to you in life. Okay, so let's talk about fatigue. What are some of the causes? It's one symptom, many causes. For a lot of women, low iron. For a lot of vegetarians and vegans, low iron is a really straightforward starting point. This is a test that can be done through any GP. You just find out your iron levels. I also like people to test something called ferritin, which is your stored iron, just to know how much iron reserve do you have in the body. The second one is thyroid. I have a lot of clients say to me, I've had my thyroid checked and it's normal. And when a thyroid hormone panel is done from a medical point of view, it may be normal because it doesn't require medication, but it may still be subclinical. And by subclinical, what I mean is that it may be off balance. Any diagnosis can take years, even decades to form, because changes start happening on a cellular basis before you reach the point where you're diagnosed with a condition. And it's really interesting, if you can pick up a thyroid imbalance early, we can really get it into much better shape so that you don't go down this pathway where it becomes a medical issue. Same with blood sugar. Often this is a really common test that's done. Once you reach pre-diabetes, even at pre-diabetes level, many doctors will send clients to us to say, let's see if we can get the sugars into better balance so we don't have to start medication. But if we start picking that up even earlier, it can be tremendous. It can be of tremendous value to prevent that. I'm going to come back to the mitochondria, and it's in bold for a reason. Sorry, I keep doing this. The next one is nervous system and burnout, low mood, low neurotransmitters. Sometimes tiredness is not tiredness, but it's actually low mood. And so there is almost a physical, so the mitochondria is physical low energy. The nervous system burnout is more of a mental low energy. And the low neurotransmitters are really around mood being low or motivation being low. Gut inflammation plays a role as as naturally poor sleep. I'm going to come to mitochondria now. The mitochondria are little parts, they're called organelles. They're in the cells. So let's show you an image. So this is what the cell looks like. This is the membrane of the cell, and this is a typical cell. Over here, you've got the nucleus where the DNA is. In this floating area, you have these little bits called the mitochondria. And the mitochondria, think of them as the battery of your cell. They are the powerhouse of your cell. The food that you eat, it's incredible how the body is built. The food that you eat gets chewed, then it gets processed in the gut, then it gets absorbed through a gut lining that's working well. It then goes in through the blood or through the fluids in the body. It goes into the cell, it crosses the cell, and then it crosses into here, and then it gets converted to energy. So it's many, many steps. And in so many of those steps, things can go wrong. But what really affects the mitochondria positively or negatively? On the internal side, we have hormones, we have genetics, you have the gut microbiome, and you have methylation. Think of methylation as a cellular detoxification. It's a process. We actually test for methylation in some of our tests. And people who don't methylate well need higher levels of B vitamins, and they need to be very careful with toxins. And in particular, they need to be really careful with synthetic B vitamins, because those kind of B vitamins can even be toxic for people who don't methylate well. And if there's an interest in methylation, I'm very happy to do a whole session on this, because I think it is something people are needing more awareness on. If you don't methylate well, you don't detoxify well, and that can affect everything from mood to fertility to heart disease, cancer. All those conditions have a methylation component in them. On the external factors, chemicals and medicines that you take will have an impact on the mitochondria. So does diet. If you're low on iron in particular, sleep, stress, and toxins. I mean, the reality is that we are exposed to more toxins than ever before. We do live in a toxic soup. And I don't like to get alarmed by that, because honestly, what do we do about that? We all do live in a city. We don't want to live under a rock. We've chosen to live in a city, and we enjoy that. The only thing we can do is strengthen our own detoxification levels and really be very aware of the toxins that are avoidable, whether it's in food, water, air, and obviously food is a major one that I think where people have a lot of choice around reducing the amount of toxins in food. So this is a snapshot from a test that we run. It's called the organic acid test. It is a urine test, and it measures over 76 different markers. It measures your probiotics. It measures whether you have a yeast overgrowth in the gut. It measures whether you detoxify well. It measures whether your mitochondria is well fed. It measures your neurotransmitters. And this is really, if you go back to this picture, in the mitochondria, the process that produces energy is something called the Krebs cycle. And some of you might have studied this in biology in school, but the human Krebs cycle is really where energy is produced. And it's really the cycle that goes round and round. And what comes out as a result of this is our ATP units, and ATP is short for energy units. Now, this is what the test looks like. This is from somebody I've worked with, where you can see that the mitochondrial markers that feed into this Krebs cycle are super low. So if you think about this as the cycle that produces energy, and these words are a version of what's here, this person does not have enough units to go into that cycle. And if you can't do that, you're not going to have great cellular energy. Now, cellular energy is, think of energy as, physical activity. That's cellular energy. This is a very, very clear reading. In some people, the results are not clear, but more and more I'm seeing people with super low readings of these metabolites. I wanted to also show this to you. In this individual's case, they also have, if you look at marker 38 over here, They're also low on a metabolite that produces serotonin, and serotonin is one of your happy chemicals, one of the happy chemicals that make you feel motivated and happy and feel positive about life. So you can see in this person's case, if they've come in saying they're tired, it is a physical issue. It is also a neurotransmitter or mood issue. And this person is also burnt out. So there are multiple issues to work on before we say energy is going to be better, because there is no magic wand here. We have to go through each of these one by one. Just some key nutrients. So a question might be, what would I give this person to help their mitochondria? Well, I would first make sure their gut's working well, their diet's well, of course. We clear all the organisms that are there. This person has a yeast overgrowth, you have to clear that. And you have to give these kind of nutrients. Methylated B vitamins. Magnesium is really important. A lot of people take magnesium, and honestly, that's a great thing to do, because 90% of the population is magnesium deficient. That's been tested and proven. Magnesium works well if there is enough of something called glutathione, and think of glutathione as your primary antioxidant that protects the liver. A hangover is when your glutathione has been depleted because of alcohol, because the liver is working really hard to clear that alcohol. So you need magnesium for glutathione to work well, and vice versa. You need CoQ10, you need protein, you need fats. So if somebody's on a very low protein diet or a low fat diet, they're for a long time, I'm not talking about short diets, but for a long time, that would have an impact on the mitochondria. And you need oxygen. And by that, I mean exercise and breath work. The entire process in the mitochondria is dependent on oxygen. So as I said, there are so many moving parts that have to be brought into balance before we say we have completed the work. But this is how we track it. So we get all the clients who work with us to do the tests, to come up with a plan. We come up with that roadmap similar to what I shared with you. And we track on a monthly basis. We start collecting. So everybody starts off by a collection of their symptoms. So we call it a wellness symptom questionnaire that they start off with. And 10 is the highest number. So for example, this person had fatigue and difficulty sleeping at a 10, and then we track that to see how it progresses over time. Now, obviously, there are many reasons to do this. One is just because collecting this kind of data is very useful so that we all know that things are going in the direction we want, but it also tells us which piece of work really shifted the needle for that person. So, let's say we got this person on a bunch of nutrients and a diet and a certain program, and there's a drastic drop in fatigue. Well, that tells us something. And so that information becomes useful for us, but more importantly for the client to really understand how their own body functions and what gets in the way. All right, I'm going to move on to some of the questions that we got. And if you have any questions, please feel free to either type them out or hold on to them, and there'll be an opportunity to have a Q&A session. So let me. All right, one question that we got is, how much coffee is too much? Drink it or ditch it? Actually, coffee is not bad at all. 1 cup of coffee there are lots of studies that show 1 cup of coffee is better for you, better for the brain. With coffee, as with anything that the liver has to detoxify, we want to look at how well a person detoxifies. If a person is in burnout, it's possible that caffeine is just hard for them to tolerate. But if somebody comes in saying, I like my 1 cup of coffee, I have no problem with that. If they're having 4 cups of coffee, I have a problem with that, right? So 1, stretching it to 2. If somebody's really struggling to sleep, I would definitely try a period without caffeine, or bring the coffee earlier on in the day so you don't have coffee in the afternoon. So there are different ways to still keep coffee in the diet. I like my coffee. I have a cup of coffee every day, and I'm not ready to give it up. So absolutely, I think you can drink it, but you have to know how much you can take for your body type. And I think that's where we can definitely help unpack that. We did get a question on IBS, and I'm very happy to do a whole session on IBS because there is so much there. But if you don't mind going back here, in order to deal with IBS, and I do a lot of work with IBS, sorry, I'm going back on the slides. For IBS, obviously, which is irritable bowel syndrome, this is where the thinking starts for most people. It must be a food sensitivity. It must be an imbalance of gut flora. And absolutely, in most cases, that is the case. But very often in IBS, there is that brain-gut communication. I do think in IBS, there's always a stress piece involved. And in IBS, the other thing to keep in mind is if you're not digesting and absorbing well, one ends up having very low nutrients. So we definitely do a lot of work with IBS. We have excellent results. If you read our reviews, there are lots of people who've reviewed, with gut issues, even as severe as Crohn's disease, which is an autoimmune gut condition that we've had really good results with. So yes, the answer is yes, we do work. And we do work with IBS. Our methodology is the same. Our methodology is around figuring out these pieces for the person who comes in with IBS and the person who comes with a thyroid issue, as well as the person who comes in with fatigue. We have to figure out these blocks. All right, I'm going to get back to the questions. I really struggle to fall asleep and wake up exhausted. Help. So how you sleep is dependent on how you wake up, and obviously how you wake up is dependent on how you sleep. When I deal with somebody who's dealing with this, obviously I check their adrenals, I check their nervous system, I check their stress hormones. Now, your stress hormones, cortisol is one of the stress hormones, should be quite high in the morning. High cortisol, high within a certain range, does give you energy, but cortisol also needs to drop at night because that helps with the production of melatonin, and melatonin is your sleep hormone. So to unpack the falling asleep and waking up exhausted, it's a combination of factors. Number one is figuring out what's going on in the biochemistry. Is the person tired and wired? Is the person burnt out? When a person is burnt out, they may be tired, but they're not typically able to fall asleep or stay asleep. That's because the nervous system is so triggered. Actually, the nervous system is not feeling safe. And so it is exhausted, but it's also wired and alert. Some of it is also habit. So if you are on a screen at night just before sleeping, that's not going to be good for sleep. Obviously, if you have caffeine later on in the day, that's not going to be good for sleep. A few things that really help with sleep, just some basics. Room should be dark, room should be cool. It should be like a cave. Magnesium really helps with sleep, as just something that people can try. If you have a bathtub, soaking in Epsom salts really helps with sleep. But if you're dealing with a deeper physiological issue, that may just help in the short term, or it may not help enough, in which case you may want to come in and have some assessments done. The waking up exhausted, in many cases, if you don't sleep well, your nervous system gets shot, your gut doesn't get the repair work it needs, and things can start falling apart even on the gut and detoxification level if you're not sleeping enough. So this I see very often. Somebody wrote in to say, I seem to do everything right, vitamins, I sleep well, no alcohol, clean eating, but I still wake up tired. I think the key here is, what is everything right? What is right for you? So you, and a lot of people do buy good quality vitamins, but it may not be the right vitamins, or they may not be, they may not be the right quality. The label might say something, but it's not what you're really getting. Sleep, if somebody says they sleep well, it's always a good idea to measure that. But and we're big fans of something called the Aura Ring to measure your sleep. The no alcohol definitely helps with sleep for some people, and even clean eating. So a lot of people come in say, I eat really clean, and clean could be too much sugar, healthy sugar. Clean could be the wrong kind of fats. Clean could be eating a food sensitivity. So let's say you're sensitive to oats, and bread, and you're eating sourdough and having a coffee with oat milk, your day has just started wrong because you've eaten something that's triggered you the wrong way. So there could be many reasons for this. And I don't mean to diminish what people do. And obviously many people do things right and it feels right, and that's great. But if you're doing things right and not feeling great, there's obviously something missing over there. I just dug up this image like 5 minutes before we started because we just got this question this evening. So I'm sorry it's pixelated, but I think it says a lot. Somebody sent us a question asking, is it possible to get all our nutrients from food without supplements? I wish it were true. I'd love to get all my nutrients from food. I take supplements. I think you have to be very careful with quality of supplements, but this is a UCLA study that was done. They actually, in California, they took a patch of land where they grew spinach, and they measured the iron content in 1 cup of spinach in 1953. They did the same experiment in 1997, and this is the amount of spinach that was needed to get the same amount of iron. And this is 1997. I'm pretty sure it's gotten worse since then. So I do think it's important to get your nutrients. You can get it from food. You can get it from supplements. The question I'm often asked is, why can't I get all of it from food? And the reason is this, and there are really 2 reasons. One is that our food supply isn't the same. You know, if we lived near a farm and got our nutrients, got our produce fresh, you have some hope of getting those nutrients, and because it does matter. The reality is things are shipped over here. I'm a big fan of all the local farms, so I do think it's a good idea to get as local as possible. So Sustainer and companies like that are growing local and I'm okay with hydroponic. I do think it's great to support them and to get as fresh nutrients from your food. That's one half of the story. The other half of the story is the demand on the body. So in 1953, the demand on that person's body was very different from 1997 and very different today, where we're dealing with stress. And I'm going to sound like I keep talking about stress, but it is true. Stress is like a black hole for minerals. Stress is like a black hole for your B vitamins. Stress is like a black hole for your vitamin C. We're pushing the body, we're pushing the mind. We don't fully understand the implication of all of this. And so, yes, I do think it's important to take supplements. But what I will say here is, if you're not sure what supplements you're taking, it's probably better to not take supplements than to take the wrong supplements. Because, for example, if somebody doesn't methylate well and they're taking a cheap B vitamin, and I do think quality and price do go hand in hand with this, but if you're taking a B vitamin and you're getting in this big tub and it is all synthetic, and your body's not able to process that, you could be doing more damage. So if you can educate yourself about supplements, figure out what you need, I think it's a great idea. If not, then don't kind of play with that. And by all means, I think we all should be doing a better job of getting as local, as organic, as clean food to get nutrients in without the additional toxins. I will definitely have some time to answer questions if you have any, but I'd also like to offer anybody who wants to have a more involved conversation about how we might be able to help you, reach out to us, sign up for a 10-minute inquiry call, and either myself or somebody from my team will be happy to answer your questions and see if we might be a good fit for you.